video transmission. All right, so we should be live here. Welcome to the Greg and Steve show. We need a name for this. If anyone is watching, please let us know if you could hear Greg and I. Greg, can you say something?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. So before we get started and wait for feedback, first thing we have to talk about is this is not financial advice. So here's a screen. I'll read this out. The hosts of this show are not registered investment advisors. The information in this show is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing said is or should be construed as financial advice. So, with that out of the way, don't listen to anybody in this space. Take information from them, sure, but make your own decisions, please. So, still waiting on anyone to type something. Maybe we've got 7 viewers. Let me refresh.
I can see 14 here on the YouTube.
Okay,
14,
I'm using
14 watching.
Okay, great. Anyone say something? Here we go. What did we get? Ben. What did Ben say? Can you read that? My screen's not big enough.
We're on Google Meet for everyone wondering, so it's not the most familiar platform.
Yes, can hear you. Morning. Yeah, I will move us to Zoom calls because, as I was telling Greg, this is a whole weird setup of a laptop on my desktop screen. It's a mess. We can hear videos a bit laggy. Sorry about that. That's my internet. All right, so
I don't think I can see chats, Steve. I've got in call messages.
Google Meet, you won't be able to see chat. You would need to load up the YouTube video yourself. But okay. I can read them out. I can see them in Streamlabs. So I'll read any questions out at the end. We'll get started. So hold on one sec. It does say my internet is slow. Dropped frame rates. Okay. Well, nothing I can do there. Let's get started. You're on my channel, so most people probably know me. So we'll start with Greg, actually. Who are you? How did you get started in this space? What are you working on? And anything else you want to say?
Well, yeah, I have one of the best anon names in crypto Twitter, Greg Oakford. So once I dox myself, everyone will be very, very surprised. I am the co-founder of NFT Fest Australia, worked on Blockchain Week the first couple of months of this year, which Steve was a part of at Marvel Stadium as one of our speakers. But I suppose more importantly, I'm just sort of, like most of the people on this call, very, very interested in NFTs and have been since probably early 2021. It probably come onto my radar more the back half of 2020, which sort of coincided. I'd made sort of a few small crypto investments in halfway through 2020, and everything was capturing my attention. And I had definitely gone down the rabbit hole a little bit prior to 2020, but nothing sort of caught my curiosity more than NFTs. Sort of around, I would say, February in 2021. And that was around the time, it was, I suppose, in a way, a pretty good time to get into the NFT community when you had things like Bored Apes, Meebits, VeeFriends. And I think for me, Gary beating the drums and also Kevin Rose launching, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Kevin and Proof and Modern Finance today, but, he launched a podcast in early March in 2021, and that really captured my attention. The first episode with DC Investor around NFTs, and that coincided with an event that I sort of helped out with, which was Blockchain Week last year in 2021. Which there wasn't really a lot of NFT content there, but it was it was a wonderful event for me to be part of because I got to meet a number of people, particularly in the Australian blockchain ecosystem, from lawyers to accountants to CEOs of digital exchanges, etc. And thought this is a really funky, weird and new world to me, and I want to be part of it, but I didn't know where I fit. And it sort of coincided really with the launch of, me, kicking the tires of a few projects in the NFT world. And, in November last year, I was working in a corporate job in sport previously, and I packed that in and decided to go sort of fully into Web3 and NFTs. So at the moment, I'm doing a little bit of consulting work for a few clients, which is, somewhat, I'm happy to talk about it publicly, but I haven't really launched my business or my name or anything like that. I have a business name, but I haven't made a lot of noise about it. I want to get a few runs on the board with clients first before sort of, beating the drums of that. But I'm a hardcore collector as well. I'm in a number of sort of projects and just love the space in general and can talk NFTs all day, every day. So that's me.
Wow. So can you mention any sort of consulting work you're doing? Like, what are you working on? Who are you working with?
I probably won't mention who I'm working with at this stage. I mean, maybe in a future episode we might be able to touch on that, but it ranges, So at the moment, I'm talking sort of. There's a potential music NFT project. There's something around Fashion Week potentially coming up. It's quite a diverse range of conversations I'm having, but it's all new, right? Like, I think we're all still figuring this stuff out, and I'm quite open and transparent about my own journey. And it is kind of funny to me, like, when I came into the space, I was sort of thinking, the Kevin Roses and the DC investors and all these people that I'd sort of said, geez, these guys must have been in it forever, right? And I think from DC investors' perspective, he probably has been in it forever, which is still probably only, 3, 4, 5 years,
Exactly.
something like that. You got the GT Souls of the world in Melbourne that have been sort of in this since 2017, which just seems like an eternity. But it is sort of funny for me now to have conversations with brands or athletes or whatever it might be, musicians around NFTs, because really sort of 14, 15 months ago, I was just feeling my way out like those people are now. But I've really dedicated my life to it for the last sort of 15 months. So I sort of had to take a step back yesterday, and you're towing the line of wanting to stay humble and grounded, but also recognizing that you do have a skill set and you do have an informational base that others want to get access to, and that's important, right, in a new space. So it's a constant thing in my head that I'm sort of battling imposter syndrome versus no, I actually know my shit here. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and on that point, I still feel like an imposter. I don't know why people are listening to me. It's just, I feel, look, I got lucky. I got early. I was in early. But then when we first met in Melbourne, we had an Australian Open meetup. I remember talking to you, and we just hit it off because we both were so deep in the space, and everything you were saying, I'm like, yeah, this guy knows his shit. And I was able to like hold the conversation. I was like, actually, I do know my shit too. And that was the sort of trigger for me to say, maybe I should do something with Greg. And then, of course, meeting again in Melbourne. And the fact we've met for probably 2 hours in real life is probably one of the closest connections in NFTs in real life.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so then my other question to you is, what was your first ever mint? And I guess, what was your most recent mint?
Yeah, good questions. So my first ever mint was actually, again, I think it was on my birthday in March 2021, and it was actually on Wax of all blockchains, right? So as I was going down the rabbit hole in February, I sort of had the penny drop moment. I think I tweeted it out a few months ago, and my buddy Steve Vallis is the CEO of Blockchain Australia. That's been a pivotal pillar for me in sort of my journey in the blockchain ecosystem. I had texted him in February when I was reading this Forbes article around NBA Top Shot, and I sort of had that moment where I was like, this is my childhood reincarnated around digital collectibles, right?
Exactly.
Instead of physical NBA cards like Fleer or what was it, Upper Deck and Hoops and all those cards that,
Oh, yeah.
I collected as a kid and still have some, like this. And because I understood Bitcoin, the white paper, and like not every technicality to it, but I understood that it created provenance and it sort of essentially couldn't be hacked, right? So my brain had been wired for, okay, that financial digital asset can't be hacked, right? It's secure. My brain suddenly went unlock and went, oh, okay, now they can do that for digital collectibles. So, essentially no one can right click save my LeBron, digital collectible or whatever. So I had that penny drop moment. And then, I really got into Kevin Rose's podcast, and I was like, I got to get one of these NFTs. And I was just Googling NFT podcasts, and I come along, actually, I'm going to bring it up here. It's like, it's actually not a bad podcast. They had DCL Blogger on a couple of weeks ago. I wouldn't say I listened to it religiously, but it's two guys that are essentially shilling wax NFTs, right? It's called the Nifty Show, right? And it's got digital collectibles and NFTs. So when I started listening to that, I was like, oh, okay, I got to go to this Wax blockchain, right? So I bought something, and honestly, I haven't looked at it since. So I should actually dig that up. So it's been, 14 months or something like that. But from an Ethereum perspective, my first ever mint was The Accountable Anteater by Gary V's VeeFriends, right?
Oh, okay,
So,
pretty good first
um,
mint.
and yeah, pretty good first mint. And the honest to truth God is I bought it because he said, we're going to do this conference called VCon, and it's going to run from 2022 to 2024. 3 years of free conference. And because I had bought Ethereum in 2020, I think for $500, it wasn't a big spend for me because I was like, well, it had gone up to $5,000 at the time that VeeFriends launched. But I was like, I only put out $500. I'll pay $500 for 3 years of conference, right? And I was still trying to figure out what VeeFriend was. Like I hadn't. I sort of understood he was going to do an IP play, but I couldn't wrap my head around how large it could get, right, in a short amount of time. So that was really my first mint, and I saw the whole MetaMask thing. Actually, funny story, the first time MetaMask popped up on my hot wallet, right? So I've set up my wallet, I've gone through all these steps. I have no help, right? I'm just reading blogs and like talking to random people in Discord and getting told don't get scammed. I'm like, who cares? I have nothing in there anyway, So it's it was just sort of but I had a 29,000 USD MetaMask gas transaction pop up on the first time I tried to mint. So there was something wrong. I remember Gary was in the VeeFriends Discord. It was like 3 a.m. He was like, don't mint. There's something's going on. And not that I had 29,000 USD in MetaMask anyway for gas. But I've still got that screenshot, and that was the first time I ever went to mint. So I actually went back to bed and I minted it, the next day about 10 hours later.
It did take a while to sell out initially, and funny that happened then. And today you just told me that VeeFriends 2 had issues, so they've
Yes.
moved it on a bit. But yeah, let me just answer some of the people in the chat. Morning to everybody, John, BB Bangers, CJ, everybody. It is being recorded, so if you're too busy now, you can come back and watch it later. But yeah, so yeah, we're talking about. Sorry, what was your latest mint? If you can tell me that, and then I'll get on to my story.
And then I need to turn the spotlight over to you so that you can give your little opening spiel
My
and
spiel.
intro, because everyone normally knows you as the Gold Ape. So let's hear from you. But my most recent mint, I think it was Scab Shop. So this is a utility, a very odd name, a utility pass for a famous tattoo artist. And I love how I say a famous tattoo artist and I don't even know his name. I can't remember his name. He was on the Proof podcast, and it was a relatively low mint at 0.1, and I got on an allow list for that. And I really enjoyed listening to him and his team talk about what they're going to do with it, but it struggled to mint out. There was going to be 5,000, and they realized pretty soon after, they'd done sort of collaborations with a number of projects like BFF, Deadfellas, Proof, etc. And I thought that would be enough to pique people's interest, but I still don't think people understand utility passes, and we can get into that in a little bit, because obviously there's things like the Proof Pass and probably something, and the Vayner Sports Pass that launched the other day as well. So we can get into that, but I still think for a lot of people, just looking at a card, a plain card, and I know you did a mint pass for your own NFT, so we can maybe talk about that. But yeah, it would have been Scab Shop. So I won't say that's been a successful mint at this stage, but you never know, right? So they did cut the supply from 5,000 to 2,500. So it has minted out now. But the floor's at about 0.08, so So I minted a couple of those.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic to talk about, and over the next few months, we're going to try to do this weekly. There are so many things, like you start talking, I'm like, there's a whole topic right there. We can talk about how to price a mint, what happens if it doesn't start minting out, and all that sort of thing. So, all right, on to me. I'm going to go back even further. I'm going to start at the start of the internet. So
This could take a while, guys.
No, I'm going to try to be very quick. So I'm in my 40s now. I'm an old man. I've ridden the wave of the internet for the past, 25 years. So I actually remember getting my first modem. And the actual first use of the modem was to connect to my cousin's modem and play an NBA game. So it would have been an EA Sports, whatever NBA 96 or 97. And they had just started a feature where you could play against each other over the well, not over the internet, over through modems. But then that modem led me onto the internet, and I just fell in love with the internet over those years. Tried lots of things. So after school, went to uni, worked in IT, web development, and all that sort of stuff. But when I was about 20 at uni, I was into gambling, sports betting, as you are. And then I got into online casinos because I knew the maths. And look, everything, porn and gambling are the two first things that will take any new technology. And it's been amusing seeing that not happen with NFTs as much. But there was porn and there was gambling online early on, and I took the gambling route. So I was doing this thing. It's on my blog as well, but I was taking advantage of casino offers. So they would say, deposit $2,000, we'll give you $2,000 for free. You just have to turn it over once. So I knew the maths that if I did this, from that $2,000 bonus, I could make $1,990. There were hundreds of casinos at the time. So this pretty much taught me how to set up everything online wallets. There was this thing called NetTeller back then. So that was your MetaMask, because you could send money to this online wallet that was cash that converted to US that you could then deposit into these casinos. And I spent probably 6 years doing that while doing a uni degree and everything else. On my blog, I write about this, where I turned over well over $1 billion in that time. But like any 20-year-old that you give a lot of money to, you spend it all. So while I had a fantastic time in my 20s, I started my 30s with very little money, but a hell of a lot of memories. So at 30, and this would have been 2010, I've said, all right, I've got to actually figure out what I'm doing. I had actually started reading about the FIRE movement, which is financial independence, retire early. So I was like, I'm still young. I've got all this energy. I'm just going to try everything. So I started at a startup incubator. I went and tried to make a blog. I started sports betting instead of casino gambling. I did all this thing. I even started angel investing. And we'll talk about Kevin Rose and Tim Ferriss a lot, I think. And I actually received an email from Tim this morning, which not personally, but I had invested in his fund through AngelList, and one of the businesses we invested in 10 years ago now just shut down. So we got zero for that. But yeah, it's interesting that it took that long, but that is how I also envision everything. I see everything as 10-year steps. So those first 10 years were the casinos. The next 10 years were throwing everything, seeing what I could do to retire early. So the goal was to make $2 million, live off $80,000 a year. And yeah, I got lucky with a couple of angel investments. I got lucky. Well, I say lucky, but I worked my ass off. So with sports betting, I did quite well. Very, very fortunate to get into Bitcoin early, because the sports books in certain jurisdictions wouldn't be able to pay back to your bank account. So they would have to pay you via Bitcoin. And this is 2012, 13. And I've still got screenshots of me selling back. So I got the Bitcoin, converted it straight to AUD. So I think it was a 15 Bitcoin to 7,500 Australian dollars. But luckily kept some as well. So yeah, over those 10 years, built a couple of products and everything, and just kept learning about crypto and everything. So 10 years after that, I made it. I got to my goal and I was retired pretty much. I was still doing a bit of betting, reading a lot about crypto and some other investments, shares and angel investing. And I was done. I was like, all right, got my family. I can enjoy life now. Then NFTs came around. So this was, it was probably mid-year 2020, the first time I started hearing about them. And I remember there was a ferocious sale, and it was actually a physical piece. And I was like, that's really cool art. I like that, but it was $50,000. So I was like, all right, that's fine. I can't afford that, but it's cool. Then I learnt about Nifty Gateway, and I was like, okay, interesting. Signed up, didn't buy anything, nothing really grabbed me. Uh, and then I saw the Beeple drop. I'd never heard of Beeple. I saw his art. I'm like, this is cool. And what clicked for me was not, I still didn't get the whole digital ownership, that sort of thing. Beeple made it easy because there was a physical with the digital. So I was more interested in the digital that was going to come with that. So my first ever buy was a bull run, and it was for $1,000 US. And then I tried to buy his other two pieces, but the credit card I used had a limit on it. So I missed out on minting those two. And it was a 5 minute mint. So I was trying to put other credit cards in and get them verified. Just didn't work. So yeah, I was fortunate that Beeple was my first ever buy. I still hadn't had a MetaMask wallet at this stage. And then, of course, the Beeple price went nuts. There was that whole period from December to around March where Nifty Gateway was the thing. There would be a drop, prices would go up 5, 10x the next day, and you could just buy and sell and make massive profits. I never sold, I just bought. So I'm still holding everything I bought from then. And then slowly I thought, all right, I want to buy some one-of-one art off Nifty. Because my thinking was there were all these artists on Nifty and they were doing open editions. So it was like, you'd get 500 of a mint. I thought, well, they've got their one-of-ones on Foundation, on Super Rare, on all these other websites. I think Maker's Place was another one as well. So my idea was, I'll just buy these artists one-of-ones. And then if they take off on Nifty, the one-of-ones are going to be worth a lot more. So I started doing that. And to do that, you need the MetaMask wallet. So that got me figuring out these seed phrases. And luckily, I had a Trezor before from my Bitcoin and everything. So it was okay. I learned that pretty quickly. And then, of course, what everyone knows me for, Bored Apes was the first mint I did from my MetaMask wallet. Wow. Minted 10 of those. Yeah, it was just my first of everything have been ridiculous. So going back to the angel investing, my first.
So your first 10 Ethereum mints were all Bored Apes.
Yes. So you go back to Etherscan and you'll see that.
I think anyone that is watching this live and anyone that's going to watch it as a recording or as a podcast, and you have just thrown something at the screen at Steve's head, that is justifiably so. 10 Bored Apes for your first mint.
I don't own 10 anymore. So that hurts because I sold most of them in between, I think, 2 and 3 ETH. But then, yeah, so then I just got on the train, started buying all these projects as we do. I think my second mint was Super Yeti. Credit to the Super Yeti guys, they keep building. And they've gone through, and I like paying them out, making memes and whatever, but they're still building, which is better than 90% of what's been released. And then, yeah, everyone knows the story from there until now. I've started NF Teams and I did a series on YouTube. You'll be able to watch those below. And now, for the past 6 months, while I still am in the space, I'm just so busy working on NF Teams that I'm not minting as much. I'm not as in as you are. So this is actually my chance to get more info from you. But yeah, so that's pretty much the story. I've been following the wave. This is the next wave. I think this will go for the next 10 years at least. And then we'll see where we are. I still think we are so early that it's the way I describe it is, geez, look at that time. I can talk. I think I could.
Yeah, how's our half an hour going to go?
Yeah, we might go to an hour. The way I see it is we're caveman and we've found fire, and the best thing we've done with it at the moment is go like this with the fire, like a Bunsen burner. The if in 2 years' time, the best thing we've done are PFPs and a bit of utility, the space is dead. Like we are gonna have to build a lot more. And an interesting story actually. My dev Matt, who is the dev for NF Teams, he went to a local meetup, and two of the guys he ended up messaging me after going, "What have you done? They hate you." So there were two guys that Matt was talking to that we both know from the startup space where I'm from, and they were like, I can't believe Steve went into NFTs. He's shilling these NFTs. NFTs are rubbish. They have no point. And for the most part, at the moment, I agree with them. It's like all we've done is collectibles, and there's a bit of membership and community and everything, but they are right. And but my thing is, they're not looking out. They were into Bitcoin. They understood the future, but it seems they can't see where this goes, which is surprising to me because I do respect their opinion and they have been able to see the future before. So I guess it's our
How
job.
much on that point? How much do you think when you've got people like that? They sound like two pretty smart guys, and um, is there an element you think where people don't have an NFT, so they just haven't had that brain unlocked to understand that like you've got this digital wallet, it's almost like your data backpack that you take around anywhere you want, right? Like, and so that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, how much do you think there's sort of almost some type of like jealousy or just pushback from people that have seen others maybe have a NFT that's gone quite well financially, or increased in price, and they sort of just don't want to believe it's true? Because I feel personally that that might be the case with some people.
Yeah. So to the first point, technically they understand. So one of the guys, it was the first guy I sat next to when I started at this startup incubator. He had the classic story, minted, well, actually was mining Bitcoin, and then threw his Bitcoin hard drive away to the tip. Had, I don't know if he had 50 or 150 Bitcoin on it. So this guy was then huge in the Ethereum space. He probably pushed Ethereum in Australia the first and further than anyone else did. He's since moved on to other chains and things like that. It's strange. And the other guy also understands everything about crypto, and they just don't see the point. And I guess we are that early that we need to keep explaining what the point is, showing what the point is, and building out what the point could be. But yeah, then on to the second point. I think that is a big part of it. That they were there, and this has happened to me as well. I could have got into Ethereum when it started, and then I was a Bitcoin maximalist for a long time, mostly because I just thought, well, everything that is being built on these other chains can just be built on Bitcoin anyway. It
Yeah.
wasn't until like I held some ETH, but it wasn't until I started buying these NFTs that I really started to understand the use of ETH. So now every day I use both Bitcoin and ETH. So I use Bitcoin daily by doing nothing. I hold it. That's Bitcoin's use. It's a store of value. So I use that daily. I use ETH daily because I'm buying NFTs or transferring or trading or something like that. So now I understand the use case of ETH as the internet computer, as the place that it's sort of the money as well, but it's for transactions every day. So yeah, I've had the chance to get on all these trains and miss them, but I got on this one early, and I do think that sort of there is a lot of people that are like, well, why should you have got these and now I can't get them for this price and so on, and they're just like, well, this is all stupid. I'm not even going to bother, and that's how they feel.
Yeah, I think there's, and I think about this all the time, and I've got, many people. It's sort of funny. The first 6 months of my journey, I felt was very underground, right? I was still in a full time job. I was sort of like dabbling in and around my job, I was sort of trying to tell people like, hey, look at this. You know, I got Rainbow Wallet pretty early on just as a read only, and I'm showing people like, oh, here's look at this token, and especially with VeeFriends, right, where everyone pokes fun at the art. People are like, you paid like $5,000 for that piece of shit, and you know, it's like, well, it gets me to a conference and blah blah blah, and this is what I think he's trying to do, and da 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 da, and people are just pushing back. So it felt a very, well, actually, lonely is the wrong word to describe it, because I mean, the energy on crypto Twitter and sort of Discord, you know, was great. But probably I kept my head down a little bit more on Twitter up until sort of NFT Fest in September last year, because I was still finding my way out. I was still, you know, had a team of 5 at Golf Australia and sort of juggling those guys. And yeah, I sort of started to make a bit more noise around sort of October, November last year. But it was a really underground experience for me, and I miss it to a degree, right? You know, you're just talking to these anons in Discord, and I remember this one guy in particular was helping me with a hardware wallet, right? Like, you know, what one to purchase and all that type of stuff, and you're trying to figure this out sort of by yourself. But now it's just, you know, the wave of people interested in NFTs and Web3 has just become next level, and you know, it's hard for me now when I get friends from text, you know, because I want to be thoughtful with my answers. And like sometimes I don't write back for 2 days because I've sort of forgot, like I've mentally gone, okay, they've texted me, I need to spend 10 minutes on replying that and being very, very thoughtful with my language. And then I often forget. You know, it's been sort of an incredible journey to see where we've got to so far. But in my mind, like there's just no world where NFTs don't exist, right? So I know that you've said, we've only done collectibles and PFPs right now. And I agree with you that that's probably 90% of the landscape. But I also think that there's been some incredible things. And I'm learning a lot about this being in the Proof Collective, right? And I knew it would be a pivot for me in 2022. I had no idea that, you know, the price of the Proof Pass would shoot up like it has. And there was no talk about Moonbirds at the time. We can get into Moonbirds in a second. But ultimately, I sort of thought, you know, the back end of 2021, I was like, okay, I've left my job. I know I want to work in NFTs, but I still want to keep collecting as part of who I am, right? Because it's my roots really. And I'm not shy to sort of say that. Like I feel like even looking at that tattoo scab shop launch, right? Like my brain's always ticking over of like, all right, what are the perks, benefits? What's the crossover between physical and digital, right? So every project I collect has essentially got some utility for me in the role that I'm doing with the consulting work, right? And just knowing where I'm going to go for the next 5 to 10 years. So even if some of these passes or collectibles don't do well, like quote unquote financially, it doesn't bother me that much because everything's sort of a learning experience. But I think that the toying with technology versus art has been a fascinating space for me to learn more about. You know, I've been interested in it since, like, I think you've got a Fidenza, Steve, but I remember listening to Kevin Rose on Modern Finance or Proof last year, talking to Tyler Hobbs about Fidenzas. I remember him talking to Snowfro about, you know, art blocks and chromie squiggles. Chromie squiggles were only at like 1 ETH at the time. And I didn't fully appreciate what was happening in terms of that. I knew about autoglyphs because I had backtracked everything Lava Labs had done, because I was like, I got to get a piece of Lava Labs. And it's actually why I bought Meebits back in sort of May, June last year. So I'm like, I'm priced out of CryptoPunks, so I got to get these Meebit things, right? And I picked them up for a decent price because everyone was flooding them after launch. But I think that, you know, I'm privileged to see a lot of these artists in the Proof Collective that Kevin pulls in, and the funky stuff that they're doing at sort of the internet intersection of art and technology has got me really bullish for that as well. And I don't come from a traditional art world, but I think that there's just so much cool stuff that's happening from a generative art perspective. But then we touched a little bit on the utility passes, right? You know, the way that I think Ridley from Tennis Australia described the AO Artball one as like it will be the VIP access pass, right, to the Australian Open, right? And there's still a lot that they need to build out with that. But that's the way I think about it for athletes or sporting teams or musicians or whoever it might be. Anyone that's got a fan base, like NFTs give you the old school fan club. Like I remember I used to write away to, you know, celebrities essentially that I liked as an 8-year-old kid, and they would send you back a signed photo and maybe a cap or whatever, and you were sort of part of their fan club, right? And I might have, you know, wrangled my mum to pay $50 to be part of that fan club or whatever it might have been. You know, NFTs for me are going to be an unlock to having fan clubs, right? We talk about the Kevin Kelly 1,000 True Fans, and we talk about long tail and niche internet communities, right? You've given it your backstory about how you've been so curious and fascinated about the evolution of the internet. This next evolution of the internet is incredible because all of a sudden digital asset ownership is part of it. And for any creators, again, whether you're an artist or a musician or an athlete or a sporting team, like whatever you are, you can have this like direct relationship with your fan base, and they can share in a little bit of the financial upside as well, which is just incredible. And then I think the last thing I would say too, and this is what I often say to people that are doubters of NFTs, like last year I did some spring cleaning of all my old school ticket stubs, concerts, sporting events, everything like that. And there's 20 years of my life memories there, probably more. And a lot of the ink has faded. They're all dog-eared. They're all like in bad condition. And it sort of was like a little depressing going, in 5 or 10 more years, these tickets probably aren't even going to be recognizable. And it's a big chunk of my life, right? When I go to VCon next month, it's an NFT, right? And it's, whether people like the art or not, I mean, it's good for me. It's like it's a Snowfro collaboration that Gary's done there. I know that I'm going to look back at that in 20 years and it's going to hold a special place in my heart. Now, if it's worth any more, just because of the collaboration and Snowfro is just, held up on a pedestal, which he may be in 20 years, maybe there's an opportunity to sell it, but it's not the reason that I have it, right? It's the reason is to capture the timestamps or the bookmarks of my life, essentially. I think I just ripped off the slogan of POAP there, but
Well, I was going to say.
Yeah, I think, NFTs as tickets are going to be a great thing. I was at the F1 last week and I said to someone, I was there on the Thursday, I said, if Daniel Ricciardo won last year, well, let's say in 2 years' time. So the F1 does, all the tickets are NFTs, right? And this is where we've got better UX. It's just, it's a mobile app. People don't even know it's a quote unquote NFT. We might not even call it an NFT. But if Daniel Ricciardo wins at home and it's an iconic victory, there's nothing stopping the Grand Prix at the 10-year anniversary of Daniel Ricciardo doing that to go, hey, anyone that's still got the ticket, essentially the NFT ticket of the F1 in 2024, and we're now in 2034, right? We are having an all expenses paid event for only people that hold that ticket that were there on the day, or if you're overseas and you want to travel to the event, come on over, right? And everything's paid, and we're going to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Daniel Ricciardo race, and we're going to watch it on this big screen, and Daniel Ricciardo is going to be a guest speaker. So I'm already thinking about that stuff, and I know you've talked about 10-year year horizons, and that's the type of stuff that is running through my brain all day, every day.
Well, we can use Tennis Australia, Ridley, with the Ash Barty ball. So if you knew about the drop, the championship ball, so you got spots on a court, and any championship winning shot, if your ball hit that part of the court as the final winner, you can claim that ball in this beautiful case and everything. No one knew Ash Barty was going to retire after winning the Australian Open. So whoever has that NFT has an extremely valuable NFT with a physical connected. We've heard just last week that the AFL is going to start working with Animoca Brands, who are just a juggernaut at the moment, signing everyone. And of course, we had Buddy Franklin's 1,000th goal. I was watching, I tuned in for that. For our international people, that was like a massive moment. That will probably never happen in the AFL again. So there's talk that that's going to come out as an NFT, and I'll probably try to pick one of those up because I still, it's only been a week or two, but I remember that moment. I wish I was there. Actually, I just saw a YouTube comment. I love this. Greg is my best NFT discovery of 2021.
Oh, that's from Boot. That's a paid ad there. No, yeah. No, I won't derail what you were trying to say, Steve, but yeah, Boot and Friendly Jameson, so the two guys I got to know in the back half of 2021 doing a lot of Twitter spaces, and they actually helped out with Blockchain Week a couple of weeks ago. So they hosted our morning spaces essentially. So yeah, Boot and Jameson are a good guy. So
Sorry, Boot and Jameson. I was actually on one of the morning things before the Wednesday at Melbourne, and they're like, "Steve, I see you in here. Do you want to speak?" And I had three children screaming their heads off, and I'm and like it doesn't. I'm sure it probably doesn't come across because I'm talking so much here, but I'm an introvert at heart. So even getting on a Twitter Spaces like that, I was a bit nervous. But that's why I'm trying to do these things as well to like lose that sort of nervousness. But yeah, so where were we? Because
you were talking sport, so you were talking some of the recent NFT announcements with sport, and I believe there was actually one with Cricket Australia yesterday too. I haven't had the time to dig into that, but we obviously had Joan Norton from Cricket Australia. I interviewed Joan. Actually, I should mention too, all the recordings from you've heard us talk about Blockchain Week a few times today. If you go to Blockchain Australia's YouTube Twitter page, you'll find all the YouTube recordings, or you can go to their YouTube page directly. But I'm also going to do a big thread today on NFT Fest Twitter. Essentially, that'll have every single session. There was 24 sessions throughout the day, both virtually and at Marvel Stadium. So we did have obviously Steve up there on stage with the likes of Giant Swan, DCL Blogger, and Danielle Weber, but we also had Ridley from Tennis Australia, Joan Norton, and Jeremy Loliga from the NBL. So all those recordings are available now, but I know Joan was saying on the day, and that's 3 weeks ago, that they were very, very close to making an announcement. And just before I went to bed last night, like any good person, I was on LinkedIn of all platforms, and I saw that Joan
what's LinkedIn?
Yeah, I know. It's funny when I mentioned LinkedIn. But Joe mentioned that they had partnered with someone to bring the Cricket Australia NFT project to life. So that will be interesting to dig into.
Yeah, and look, the hope is going forward will be maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes of this we'll just chat, but it would be awesome to get all these people in the space on our show and see what they're working on as well.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we move on to a couple of recent drops? We're going to try to talk about. Look, we've got through the whole initial thing, so now we can talk about NFT projects and so on. I think you wanted to mention a few that were happening this week, probably the two biggest ones, of course.
Yeah, I think no doubt Moonbirds is a word that we've all been saying quite a lot the last couple of weeks, and then VeeFriends Series 2 was meant to actually launch yesterday, but there was a delay, like in many projects. That's actually a 12.5 day mint window, so there's no sort of like frantic necessity for people that are minting Series 2 VeeFriends to have a small window. You've got nearly 2 weeks to mint, so if you are minting those, no need to panic. But yeah, Moonbirds, I think.
Well, why don't we talk about? Sorry, Greg. Why don't we talk about VeeFriends first? So, if you can see in the background here, there's a couple of books up there. I ended up buying 60, and I thought that was a lot. Trust me, my wife thought that was too many books at the time. And then I saw your bookcase. You replied to my tweet with your bookcase. I don't know how many you bought, but it was a lot more. So the idea was, we can go back for those that don't know the book game and then VeeFriends 2. We talked about the initial VeeFriends. Personally, I only wanted the gift goat, and this was the one that it was 5 ETH, and at the time, ETH was quite high, so it was like 25,000 Australian. And I am a fan of Gary's. I actually switch in between thinking he's awesome and not, and yeah. So I was like, all right, I should get a gift goat, and then they didn't sell out, so I was like, well, I'll probably be able to get them cheaper. And then I waited, and classically, of course, they just rocketed. And I just knew that someone like Gary, and we can talk about Kevin as well, when they put their face to something, you know that they're going to give their all, because losing face or having a quick money grab on something like this will destroy their sort of what they've built up over the past decades. So investing in these sort of people and their projects is a no-brainer. The question then becomes, what happens when they grow it? So if you look at the book token, there are, I think, 120,000 tokens. I don't know how many VeeFriends 2s there are. Do you know, Greg? Sorry.
Yeah, it's 55,555. So the
Oh,
reason
wow.
being
He loves
Gary's
his
favorite
fives.
number is five. So yeah, it's quite a high supply for that. I don't think we've really seen. Well, I mean, obviously, book games was an exception to the rule, but we normally see drops of 10,000, 20,000, don't we? So 55,555 will be interesting. Having said that, the mint price is set at, Gary has said for months that it wouldn't be higher than $1,000 USD. So they actually set the price for every mint the other day. Actually, I shouldn't say every mint because there's a lot of nuance to Series 2. But essentially, if you've been allow listed, which is I think about 70% of the total supply,
Oh, wow.
you will pay 0.335 ETH, I think it was announced. Or maybe it was just
0.03 or 0.3.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, 0.3.
No, 0.3. You're right. If it's $1,000 bucks,
it's $1,000 USD. So yeah, it's around about 0.35.
So what will you take in from 55,000 at 1,000? Is that 55 million or 550 million? My maths.
I would definitely need to bring my calculator up, but there are a number of.
I'll do the math.
You've got 10,255 that are going to Series 1 holders. So I hold 2 Series 1 VeeFriends. They were my first two mints. I get 2 freebies essentially, which is an evolved character of the current ones I have, the current 2 Series 1. And I got allow listed for 6 Series 2. But on top of that, for anyone that's not aware of VeeFriends, I mean, this might not be piquing your interest, but it's even for me that I find myself pretty deep in the VeeFriends ecosystem. Having said that, probably the last 4 or 5 months, I've withdrawn a little bit because the Discord is quite chaotic. Like there's over 300,000 people in the Discord, and the proof Discord for me is where I spend most of my time, and it's only 1,000 people, and it's just it's a little nicer pace, and probably sort of now that I've been in the space a little bit, it's probably for collectors that are a little bit more mature in the space as well. So I don't find myself in VeeFriends Discord that much, but I did go down the rabbit hole of the nuances of how to get these tokens the other day. And back to your book game, Steve, Gary in August essentially said, and if you've been following Gary for a long time, like I have been, nearly over 10 years, and I was fortunate to actually get to meet Gary, and I do feel like I've been somewhat of his defense lawyer the last couple of weeks, because I've got a lot of people that I highly respect, and it's not that I don't respect them because they don't have a good rap for Gary, but I don't want to be one of those people that, like, I believe in Gary and I really like him. I got to meet him. He's probably the nicest quote unquote celebrity I've ever met, and I have met a few people through my sporting job and stuff like that, and some people are very, very different off camera, and Gary was the most engaging person that I've met. I met him at the Emerson in South Yarra, which is at this wine event for Empathy Wines that I was lucky enough to get a +1 to go to. It was about 150 people, and he literally went around to every single person and had a conversation with them. And it wasn't like one of those, yeah, how's it going, handshake and out of there. Like, I think we were actually talking about LaMelo Ball coming to the NBL at the time, and we just started talking hoops and stuff like that. So, very, very engaging individual, but he does have that brashness, right? That sort of New York, like sort of people don't like the language sometimes. They sort of call him a snake oil salesman. And I get it. I'm not here to sort of convince anyone otherwise, but it's not in my personality makeup that I'm going to sort of cower to a sentiment from 5 other people that are like, oh, no, he's a snake oil salesman. So I'll fly the flag for him if I think it's necessary, but I'm not in the business of sort of convincing others to like him. But back to book games. So obviously...
Oh, actually, we can go on that. So that's all I've heard from everybody that's ever met Gary Vee, how amazing he is in person. What you see is what you get. But then I think I mentioned to you before, we're at this stage, it seems, where we have a lot of, well, not a lot. We've got a few people that are sort of peak NFT where they've done so well beforehand. Everything they've dropped before has done so well and made people so much money that anything they do in the future seems to pop as well. but we're only one mistake away from them losing it all, sort of thing. So we've got a few examples. Pack is probably the most recent one. So I've followed the Pack train the whole way. So Pack, pretty much known for his cubes and a few other projects along the way. But the first one, well, he did an initial drop on Nifty and then a few collaborations. But the first big one was this Ash drop. So I had bought a couple of Ash and then converted into tokens. So there was a ERC20 Ash token that was meant to be his whole ecosystem. After that came Poets, which I got dropped free ones and then bought more, of course. And then there were a few others, and then Merge was another big one where I actually spent probably the most I've ever spent on an NFT on a Merge. And then just, I think time moves crazy in this space. So it could have been a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. He had the Ash 2 drop. Now, that didn't go so well with, I think, bots being able to take over. The price of Ash crashed. And then the worst part was the way he reacted on social media. And now you just see the sentiment switch straight away to this bearish tone on everything Pack. And I'm positive that he'll be able to bring it back. And I'm already starting to look at, like, what can I pick up now? But then, yeah, you've seen it again. There was a bit with Fuck Render had another drop, and there was a bit of a sentiment shift after that. I've been a Fred fan since day one, so I know that he will keep building, and I'm more than happy to hold all my Fuck Render pieces for a very long time. But you can see this happening, and it's really tough in this space. So I don't think people understand how hard it is to build. And if you've got someone like Gary Vee, and I did the math, sorry, it was 55 million. Yeah. And his brother AJ with the sports one last week, where the contract stuffed up and people paid a lot of gas. But people expect perfection, and none of us know Web3 Solidity contracts as well. Manifold's probably the best, and these were Manifold contracts that messed up. So it's very difficult, and people expect that, oh, look, I'm investing $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. I demand perfection. I demand new drops all the time. I want you to update me daily. And it's as if they don't understand how things are created and that they take time. So yeah, it's a tough one for creators, and it's just, yeah, a lot of hard work. And I think people that are in this space just need to understand that things take a lot of time. And I'm probably going back to my own NF teams with this. Yeah. We're building so hard in the background, but I don't like to show anything until it's done. So I get it every now and again, like saying, oh, this dropped 6 months ago. When's the next release? When's the next that? And I'm like, just wait. Like, yeah. And so, yeah, but
it is interesting. And I would love maybe next episode or 100% in a future episode to really dig into NF teams, and like for me to ask you some questions, because, you know, you've obviously given everyone some backstory of your journey. And, you know, one of the reasons I think I should be very transparent to say I hold 6 NF teams. I minted 7, but I actually traded one with Daryl Murray.
Oh, that's right.
Which was quite interesting. I woke up one morning, I'd sort of just threw out a random tweet before I went to bed saying, go on Daryl Murray. You know, it was when sort of Ben Simmons, the trade had to come, and I had said to a friend, I'll do a deal with Daryl Murray before he offloads Ben Simmons. I woke up the next morning and Daryl Murray's in my DMs going, all right, let's do it. And it was for a Crypto Arte, one of his Crypto Artes, which is a historical piece for an NF teams. But you know, I minted in at 7 NF teams way before I knew you. I just sort of knew you through Twitter. And I think one of the things that, you know, has been easier for me to identify in NFT sort of collecting has been, you know, who is the person or the people behind the project and what is their incentive. And to me, my brain just went, all right, he's got a gold 8. He looks like he's not doing this for money. He looks like he's doing it sort of just for the pursuit, right? To do something,
To learn,
to learn and the pursuit. So, and and I'm a sports person as well. It had sports connotation. So I said, all right, it's a low mint price. This is a relatively sort of, carefree one for me. And let's see how this thing shakes out. But I think we really should dig into you as a project founder, because, you do a lot of shit posting on Twitter and engagement farming and all that.
No.
But I think actually behind the scenes, you're probably a little bit too humble to a degree as a project founder. There's a lot of people that wheel themselves out as project founders. There's almost these sort of, new school heroes, etc. But I think, you're actually an authentic builder behind the scenes. So I'd really like to dig in future episodes around NFTs and sort of give everyone a behind the curtain look into what you're building and why you're building it.
Yeah, I'm always happy to shield my project. So we can definitely do a bit on that. But I have my own Daryl Morey story. I was bidding on one of ones and he was bidding against me. So I just had to stop. I knew I couldn't compete. So it was very cool that day when you posted in the Discord that you had made that swap. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Back to VeeFriends. 0.33 ETH mint seems quite high for a $55,000 drop. 55,000.
Yeah, I should mention too, it won't be 55 million because I think around 30% of the supply is not being, like you have to either burn book game tokens for some of that 30% supply, and there's going to be a small auction component for a new spectacular level called Emerald that he's releasing. So that'll be around about a supply of 250, I think. So, but it's still a decent whack for sure.
Yeah. So personally, after buying the books, getting the tokens, I sold all of mine at about 0.6 ETH each before the before VeeFriends came out. So like I said, I love Gary Vee. I'm just not all that into VeeFriends, but I know you are.
Yeah, I think, I was even listening to a podcast the other night about VeeFriends trying to catch up. And if you're a bit of a VeeFriends nut, I'd encourage you to listen to the Jeremy Knows podcast. It's probably the best one I've found, just to give you half an hour sort of snapshots. I'm just trying to find it right now. Jeremy Knows. You can find him on Twitter. I think he has about 15,000 followers. He's sort of like a hardcore VeeFriends fan that tries to break down all the nuance of the project. But I think, there's no doubt in my mind that, a lot of the stuff he's doing is going to skew to the next generation. Like he talks openly about, kids wearing backpacks with, VeeFriends on them.
That's what I don't see. That's where I'm a bit like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
His market is, for a want of a better word, I think Noah Kagan coined this term, wantrepreneurs. So now I think he's moved into a lot of entrepreneurs and he has that network. But I don't see how that switch from the entrepreneur guy owning VeeFriends and going to the conference crosses to a Disney type play. So it'll be interesting to watch because Gary Vee's going to do it. It's just how he makes that switch across.
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish he will make something pretty successful.
I'm sure that will happen
in the
too.
long term. And I think about too, even people that maybe are in their teens right now that, I was speaking to a couple of them yesterday, actually, 2 20-year-old kids that know Gary and love his work. And I was sort of teaching them a little bit about NFTs. And I said, go and dig up some of Gary's content, because they're like, yeah, we love Gary, blah, blah, blah. Like, you only got to look forward, whether it's 10 years, 15 years down the track, and they have families and kids and, they have an affinity for Gary. But if you actually listen to Gary, and this will be the last thing I'll say about Gary, because I don't want me to come across as like I'm just this Gary fanboy talking about nothing else.
Hey, I love Gary too, don't worry.
But I like I said before, I think I've gone into bat for him the last couple of weeks because I feel like some people are taking shots, unnecessary shots. But the sort of thing for me is if you listen to him on Kevin Rose's show in April last year. So if you go to the Modern Financial Proof podcast, Gary was a guest, and he's boys with Kevin, right? They've been boys since sort of like the early Web 2 days. And he, for the first time, and I've listened to a lot of Gary content over 10 years, for the first time, he sort of gave this insight where he said, look, behind the scenes, I'm actually a lot quieter than people expect. Like in front of the camera, I've got this sort of like brash, like in your face, like driving messages home, which rubs people up, some people up the wrong way. But he said ultimately, I believe in traits like accountability, right? And I believe in patience, and I believe in gratitude. And these are all the things that the Tim Ferrisses of the world and people that have probably had really, positive impacts on people, but it's said in a different way, right? Yeah. Tim and Kevin talk in a more gentler fashion, a little bit more humble, a little bit more calm.
You're right.
Gary is over the top, but underneath all of that stuff, right, is actually he genuinely cares about people and genuinely believes in accountability. And, I think he talks on Kevin's show about he knows that his own voice is only going to have a cut through to maybe people like myself, but maybe for 60 or 70% of the population, it's just not going to cut through because all they see is this loudmouth American and it rubs them up the wrong way and they shut down. So he wants to essentially build out characters that can beat the drums of accountability and patience and all these sort of attributes that he likes, that he wants people to take into their own life. And he wants to do that through these characters. And he goes into detail about it for about 15 minutes on that show. And it was actually, you could feel the genuineness in his voice of like, he knows that he's just not everyone's cup of tea. So he is going to use the voices and these sort of intellectual property of these characters to drive home the traits that he thinks are important for humans to adopt.
Yeah, and he talks about it in his most recent book as well. So I've read all of Gary's books. But yeah, he talks about what's the main thing in it. He says his weakness, there are 12 ingredients, but his main weakness is candor, kind candor. Yeah. So he's trying to get that across as well. So, okay, well, that's probably enough of VeeFriends too, but something we do want to do, and now not financial advice, but people love price predictions and so on. So what we'll try to do whenever we talk about a project, let's give a next week price prediction and hopefully this is still running in the year, a year's price prediction on VeeFriends. I'll let you go first.
Geez, he actually made a video yesterday talking about, not talking about the floor, like he's not going to talk about the floor at all, etc. Yeah. Look, I think VeeFriends Series 1 sitting at, it was about 15, 16 a week or two ago. I think it's down to about 12.5, 13 at the moment. Series 2 at 55,000 supply. So 12 months down the track, you say?
So let's say a week after, well, let's say for next Thursday, I'm assuming, let's go a month and a year.
Yeah, let's say a month for VeeFriends Series 2 because
it's going to take 12 days.
Out for they're actually going to take a month to mint the whole thing, right? So let's do once the public sales happened and, 24 hours after that, something like that. I would say I'm going to go 1.5 floor.
In a year or in a month?
Off the bat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that, that might be high, but I look at what book games have done at 125,000 supply. I can't say I paid attention all that often. Like I still hold my 20 book game tokens. I've done nothing with them, but they did give me the 6 allow list spots, right? They've sat around the 0.2 to 0.35 mark for a lot of times, and then they ran up to sort of like 0.6. So you've obviously sold the top there. So kudos to you there. But I would say, I'd be comfortable around probably the 1.25 to 1.5 mark.
Okay.
And I know that's a lot, but I'm just looking at Series 1 floor, what book games did. That's probably my...
Okay. Yeah, I think it'll take some sort of catalyst from Gary, and there might be lots more info that comes out during the drop and everything. I would say it's not going to go under mint. So my assumption is about 0.5, 0.6 in a month's time when we do this. Yeah. A year from now, no idea. You can't even... It's just...
Yeah, a year's tough.
The funny thing is we're coming up on a year of Bored Apes. So it's like, I could never have imagined that the floor would be over 100 ETH. I couldn't have imagined it being over 10 ETH at the time of purchase. So yeah, we'll just stick to the month. So I'm going 0.5, 0.6. You're going 1.5,
Yeah, I'll go. I'll
1.2.
go. I'll
You can
go
have a range.
1.25,
Okay.
1.25 to 1.5.
Okay. We'll
So,
see.
so
We'll see how
yeah,
that goes in a
yeah.
month's
Now
time.
we better talk Moonbirds very quickly before we wrap. And actually, we
Yeah.
should give a shout out to BFF, right? So my BFF was something that launched last year. They did like a big virtual introductory to Web3, focusing on women and non-binary people, right? So it was, you had even you had Jamie Schmidt, who was a speaker at Blockchain Week. You had Avery from Vayner NFT. You had Eva Longoria was a speaker. Like, they had all these powerful women, not just in the Web3 space, but just in general, right? And they did a 4 hour, I think it was close to 4 hour introductory to Web3, right?
Wow.
And then they launched a Discord, and they gave a lot of people that were on that call a free My BFF bracelet, right? And they ended up calling, I mean, we hear of BFF for sort of besties, right? But they've actually called it Blockchain Friends Forever, right? So they're trying to create a space that is friendly for women and non-binary people, and they've done a pretty phenomenal job so far. And their new community manager, Renee Regin, she's actually the wife of Friendly Jameson. So she just got appointed, I think, a month ago to their community manager position. So they're launching a PFP this week. So we should give a bit of a shout out to BFF, because I think, when you think about some of these women-led projects like Boss Beauties and World of Women, and now My BFF, Crypto Coven, there's a number of others that I'm forgetting, but I think a lot of these projects have done a really good job. But My BFF in particular, I've sent a lot of my female friends to their Discord to learn some more, because they're doing a really good job facilitating a sort of a good learning environment in there. So just want to give them a little bit of a shout out. Holding zero, by the way. I'll let you know if I hold anything. But the Moonbirds. Let's maybe wrap the show with Moonbirds. What do you think?
Yeah, and if anyone wants to just type a question in, we'll
Yeah.
do Moonbirds, and any questions we'll quickly answer as well.
Yeah, and our half an hour has gone really well.
Yeah.
I think we'll get better at this, guys, as the weeks go on. We sort of didn't have a lot of structure today, but hopefully you found a little bit of value. So Moonbirds. What do we want to know about Moonbirds other than a potential price prediction? Because going back to what we were talking about with utility before, this is, to me, going to be a project that people point to in the next 2 to 3 years, that go, that was a pivotal moment from going, okay, yes, it's a collectible, but it's actually a utility first NFT with a hint of collectability.
Well, this is the question I want to ask you. So, Moonbirds is an offshoot of Proof. Well, to get more people into the whole ecosystem of Kevin Rose. You minted a Proof at 1. I was asleep. So there is, me and you talk about Kevin and Tim, like, they're our heroes. If we ever get Kevin on this show, I will finish the show and retire from everything. So,
all right, someone clip that. Someone clip that, and we're going to tag him and Ryan Carson into that.
But I followed, like I was saying, I've followed the wave of the internet. Day one, Kevin Rose was there, and then Tim joined. And look, the random show is probably the only show where I'll stop what I'm doing to go and listen to it. But my question is, Proof, and I guess this can be asked of any NFT project, Proof went from 1 ETH, currently 89, 90 ETH. We know that you had the Grails drop. You're going to get 2 free Moonbirds, but you're still not selling your Proof token. You could get, I don't know, $300,000-$400,000 for it. What value do you see? And I guess this explains what Moonbirds might be, but why are you holding a ticket to a Discord is probably the best example, the best words for it at the moment. Why are you holding that instead of selling? Where do you see that $300,000 or $500,000 value? And then how does that value get moved across to Moonbirds as well?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, the backstory for me, I've obviously spoke about Kevin, and, we've both obviously had, Kevin shape
Crushes.
our yeah, we are Kevin fanboys, no doubt. Look, I did get lucky in terms of like I was always going to mint a proof pass, but the backstory, and I will get to all your questions you just asked, but I think you talked about you were asleep. I have a pretty amazing story to a degree of how I minted my proof pass because my dad was staying with me at the time and he had COVID and it was a little bit scary in sort of December. I was up in Sydney for a bunch of crypto events and it was sort of just as I was starting to make my way into like doing a little bit of consulting. I had all these meetings and I get a call from my dad and he's in the ER and it was, I had to fly home and it was just, my next sort of 10 days were, especially the first couple, were very, very stressful. And I'm looking after him in my home and, sort of calling nurses and doing all this kind of stuff. And I had seen Kevin tweet about it and I knew it was coming because I'm always listening to free podcasts and he had sort of just mentioned it in his sort of the humble way that he does, that they're doing this passing and there's some funky stuff with it. I'd also, Gary actually tweeted about it once. He said, if there's someone you'd want to bet on, it would be Kev. And I was sort of thinking, don't tweet out Gary. Keep it underground for now because it's only going to be 1,000 passes. But when he announced it, he said it's going to be a Dutch auction. It's going to be 5 ETH with a floor of 0.5. Now, I didn't have 5 ETH liquidity at the moment at that time in a wallet, and I went, shit, this is going to mint out at 5. Or I was even speaking to a guy that Fresh Faye on Twitter that is on Kevin's podcast a little bit on modern finance, and we were both sort of going, does it hit 3.5? Does it hit 4? So I saw a world where it maybe hit 3.5, 4. So with my dad's condition at the time, my focus was elsewhere, right? My focus was on dad. And I thought, look, I want one of these passes, but maybe I can get it off secondary for, I'll sell a me bid or I'll do something, like I'll find a way on secondary. I just can't dedicate bandwidth to that right now. And the day before the mint, so the mint was at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, right? Well, that was when it started at 5 ETH, so it's going to start at 4 a.m. And it was actually the day I was meant to run the half marathon, which you sent me out some gear, some NFT and stuff, but I had to pull the pin on that because of, I was in isolation with my dad. So the night before, my dad actually had a turn for the better on the Saturday, right? The night before, and he was outside in the garden and he was, feeling better, looking better. And that gave me a sense of relief, right? So all of a sudden my brain had a bit more bandwidth to go, all right, maybe I'll just spend a couple of hours trying to get liquidity to get 5 ETH into a wallet, because I thought 5 ETH is a high mint price.
Oh, yeah.
It would be, I think, the second highest token I've ever bought. And I thought it's going to be worth it, right? I want to be on a 3-year journey with Kevin as a utility pass. And to be honest, it was the access for me as well, right? Access to a high level Discord. But not only that, I knew he was going to over deliver, right? I've followed Kevin for long enough. It wasn't just going to be this little pass. And I was wanting to get into the Web3 space, whether it's as a consultant, whether it's launching a project down the track, whatever it is, whether it's working for a project, I knew I want to be in the space. And what better way to be in a group with Kevin Rose, right, leading the way. So I almost looked at it as an MBA in a way, right? Like I've paid more for traditional college education. I've got a lot less out of than getting close to sort of Kevin Rose and his inner circle. So for me, it was a no-brainer. But I couldn't get 5 ETH into MetaMask, right? I couldn't get enough from an exchange. I was getting hit with limits, all that. And I got a little dejected and I just gave up. The night before, I went, all right, I'm just going to have to get one off at secondary at some point and, sell a token that maybe I don't want to, but it's done, right? So I went to bed and I set my alarm at 6 a.m., knowing that the Dutch started at 5. So really, I'd given up on minting a proof pass. I wake up and I try not to check my phone the first time I wake up out of bed, but today, this day was different. And the first tweet that pops up on my feed is Kevin, and he's like, oh, this is fun and interesting. Like we've had a couple of 100 passes mint and we're down to like 2.25 or something. I literally raced out of bed. Like, that meme that you see the guy with throw the covers off, like that was me. Yeah. And I race out of bed, I get my laptop, and this is where greed comes into it, right? I'm like, holy shit, it keeps dropping. And so when I looked at it, there was only 150 or 200 or something that had been minted. And it was at 2.25. And it's dropping by 0.25. I think it was every 10 or 15 minutes. So it gets to 2. Now I've got enough liquidity for 2. So I'm like, wow, I can get one. This is
But then what
amazing,
does
right?
your
I can
brain
get one.
start saying?
So my brain starts going, I'm going to get 2, right? Now I have no idea the floor is going to do what it's currently doing. Like, hand on heart, there's no, I think even Kevin would say that. But I thought I'll get 2. And, to be honest, at the time, my brain, I was like, maybe I can gift one to someone, or just ask them to pay costs and, like that, get them in with me and be on this ride and whatever. And I'm watching it go down, and there was the counter on the website that said how many mints were still available. So there's still like 700 available at 1.5 ETH. And I'm like, wow, I can get 2. So I went to mint at 1.25, and then I still kept getting greedy because I thought it's still not past 300 mints. And then I think I minted token like 320 something, right? And I minted at 1 ETH, but I went to mint 2 at 1 ETH, and I couldn't find a button on the website, like for multiple mints. You were allowed to mint 2, but I couldn't find it, right? So I was like,
was a 2-in-1 transaction?
Yeah. So I've said this to multiple people, and they said, yeah, we couldn't find the multiple mint button either. I don't know whether anyone minted off contract or whatever, but I then tried to switch wallets, and while I was moving another 1.1 ETH to another wallet so I could mint a second pass, it just went like that.
Yeah,
and
it reached that number that just sets everyone off.
And the gas spiked and everything. So it was probably 45 seconds after I minted my first that everything just went. And I'm still sort of kicking myself to this day that I could have got 2 at 1.25 and I had the liquidity, right? And so I know a few people that have multiple proof passes and they are quite happy. But for me, it was a utility pass. It was access to get to Kevin and his inner circle of Web3 people and artists and everything like that. And, it started off as a slow burn. It was just a Discord. Like, we minted and there was nothing for 2-3 weeks. Kevin said, we're going to stand up the Discord in early January. We had the first proof town hall on the 2nd of January, and I actually got to speak to Kevin up on stage, and because he was asking about events around the world, and I said, well, I run this event called NFT Fest, and he sort of said, oh great, I'll jot that down, because it's going to do a lot of meetups, right? There's already been a number of proof meetups all in America, and there's been some in like Berlin and stuff like that, but they're going to have official ones at NFT NYC, at Consensus, at various events, and then next year for Moonbird holders as well as Proof Collective holders, and I think there'll probably be a small percentage of the general public that don't hold either that might be able to get in as well, or maybe they have to buy their ticket from a Proof or Moonbird holder. I'm not sure how that'll shake out, but it's going to be called Proof of Concept. And Kevin's right-hand man, Ryan Carson, who was also a speaker at Blockchain Week, he's been like almost the ultimate find for me in 2022. Like, he just burst onto the scene for me. I was like, I was sort of like, who's this Ryan Carson guy? And I dug into him, and he's just like the most high energy, just awesome dude. Like, he's always in Discord. He's like the perfect Robin to Kevin's Batman to a degree with Proof Collective. And then you got the other guy, Justin Menzel, who's sort of the lead director, and he's lead creative director, and also a co-founder. So that's a lot on Proof. But yeah, ultimately, long story short, is I bought it as a utility pass, right, to be with a high level collectors.
I think like you've cut out. Oh, there we go. You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Look, I paid 1 ETH. It's been a good buy, obviously. But Moonbirds is. I said this on a Twitter Spaces yesterday. There's this Twitter Spaces that I jumped on for 10, 15 minutes. And I do think there's a component to Kevin who's very, very humble, but I think he's got his competitive spirit back from Dig days, right? And let me expand on that. So for those that don't know, you should Google Dig and Reddit and these type of things. And there's an awesome podcast with Kevin and Alexis Ohanian, who's the co-founder of Reddit, that they did in December on the Proof podcast. And those two were competitors back in sort of 2004, 5, 6 era. All the errors Steve was talking about earlier with the evolution of the internet. And Reddit essentially won out, but Dig was huge, right? Dig was, the Dig Nation was so big for such a long time, and that was Kevin's baby. And, Kevin often gets into the Proof Discord now, and he'll be like, it's 5 a.m. I never get up at 5 a.m. I haven't got up at sort of like 5 a.m. for 10 years. He's like, I just can't sleep. All I'm thinking about is like, you know, funky stuff we want to do. And I just think he's got this competitive spirit back, and he has got ties to Lava Labs and, you know, Snow Throw and Art Blocks. Like when I started listening to him on Modern Finance before I really started to get into the PFP scene, I could just tell he was appreciative of the technology and the exploration of what is happening with NFTs, right? Whether it was, he's obviously a big CryptoPunks guy, you know, but then the art block stuff, the autoglyphs, like anyone that was doing anything funky with the intersection of technology and art or collectability, I felt like he was really appreciative of. Where I think we are in the journey, right, and what Bored Apes have shown and Azuki's and these type of projects is we are in this sort of brand building era, right, where, you know, getting celebrities in or getting people like you need to be building. Yuga's been successful because they sort of just keep pushing and building and moving the sort of the goalpost forward, moving the chains forward. And Lava Labs sort of, you know, and I know you've been sort of somewhat critical of Lava Labs, Steve, too, of just like not doing anything, right? Especially with the Meebits drop. And I think with all the news the last couple of months, like Lava Lab, you know, Yuga buying CryptoPunks and Meebits, you know, essentially Bored Apes flipping CryptoPunks many months ago. I actually think, you know, I keep thinking of the Michael Jordan meme from The Last Dance, and I took that personally. And I actually think Kevin, you know, and he's been openly stated that he wants to make Moonbirds a top 5 PFP project, right? And that's what I think has got so much buzz around it. But I really think with him and Ryan that have been successful operators over the years that are not doing this for money, sort of similar to your situation with NF teams, they have got this competitive spirit that they want to show the Web3 world that it's not just all Yuga Labs owning the space, that these guys that have been successful entrepreneurs in their own
some
right,
old dogs can
show
some new
tricks.
tricks.
Are going to show some new tricks. So I got everyone up in a little bit of a frenzy accidentally yesterday by saying that, but I believe that there's some truth to it. And Kevin's a humble guy, so like he's not going to come out and openly say I want to crush someone or whatever. And I don't think he necessarily wants to crush any other project. I just think that he has probably knows that there's a lot of younger people in the NFT space too, and like no one even knows what I did with Big Nation. So let me show you. Let me do this one more time. So you know, I'm excited for Moonbirds as what I think will be a pretty cool, you know, little image, but ultimately a utility pass, right, to a lot of different things.
Yeah, and one of the things we do want to talk about is how these drops work. So Moonbirds initially were going to just do Dutch auction, open to everybody. Then we heard that there was so many people that wanted in that they were going to mint out as many as they could straight away. So then it's moved to this pre-mint. I've applied for the pre-mint. The interesting thing, I just read this morning that there was 25,000 people that applied, which surprised me. I thought it would be 100,000 or more, but you did need 2.5 ETH in the wallet. You needed to connect your Twitter and Discord. And I'm sure they're going to go through and try to get rid of all the bots and everything. But the interesting thing is now Murakami, who did CloneX, is this massive Japanese artist. I hold 2 of his seeds. He also did a sort of whitelist, but it was just a simple form. He tweeted that there was 4.9 million entries for his drop. Now, there are 1.5 million people that have ever bought an NFT. So this was an interesting one where I talked about how many bots are still in the space. And we'll get onto this conversation another time. But it surprised me that there was only 25,000 that actually applied. And Ryan, who I've just started following as well, was saying the demand is so high, we have to move to this. And honestly, I didn't see, maybe I'm not following the right people at the moment, but I didn't see that demand. So while I definitely want to grab some, and I hope my wallet is one of the ones selected, or my second wallet, or my third, and I guess we can move on to where the price is going to be in a month and end it soon because we're at an hour 30.
Yeah, sure.
I'm thinking maybe the hype isn't there. Like, it's going to be an interesting one. It's only 8,000. but 2.5 ETH. And I guess once you start talking in these over 1 ETH sales, we can look at past big drops like Mechaverse, Invisible Friends. And I know this is completely different,
Yeah.
but I'll go first on my price in a month because you went first last time. And look, you talked and more than enough about Kevin, and I echo everything you said there. That if I've got a man crush, it's Kevin, and then Tim's probably second. Sorry, Tim. But I would say in a month, what I haven't even thought about it yet though.
You know, we should have called this show the Steve and Greg show.
Hey, it's an option. We do need names for everyone listening. So we'll eventually come up with something. But you have mentioned that you'd be moving to a Moonbird PFP soon. So we're waiting for that.
I will. You've just dropped the alpha. The cool.
Oh shit! Was I not meant to share?
No. It's fine. I've said it to a few people already. Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm in a Moonbird that resonates with me because I think I've had the cool cat with the crypto arte background there for long enough. So it's time for a change. But anyway,
long enough. You find the one NFT that you are and you stick to it.
Says the guy with the gold ape, right?
Simple, just find a gold ape.
Just find a gold bored ape.
So in a month, most projects that have their second drop are about a 1-to-5 ratio. So you got bored apes, 110, mutants, nearly 30 now. I'm going to say, I'm actually going to go 6 to 8 ETH. That in a month's time, that's where they'll be.
In a month? What about this weekend?
Oh, it'll be a blow off. There'll be a blow off top. It'll go to maybe 10 ETH. Yeah, I think 10, and then 10 to 11. It might creep up over 11 for a sec, but yeah, I reckon a blow off top of 10 comes back down, settles 5, 6, 7 ish. But yeah, we're all just guessing in this space, and
we
and
are,
the thing is, the interesting thing with Moonbird, sorry, Greg, is that utility is based on how long you hold it. So I would assume any flippers getting in are going to want to flip very quickly because it's going to be hard to buy in 6 months if these people 6 months ago has this utility that you don't get for another 6 months. So that's a very interesting concept too. So I think what they've done here is make the flipping cycle much quicker. So you get all those people out very quickly. So we're going to see a lot of volatility early. And then once people have their Moonbird and know that the longer they sit on it, the more utility they get, I think we're going to see a stabilization in price. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how new ones sell in, say, 6 months' time.
Yeah, agreed. And I think anyone that doesn't know about Moonbirds, I mean, unfortunately, you've missed the opportunity right now as we speak on the 14th of April to enter the raffle. But if you are eyeing one off on secondary, I'd encourage you to listen to Overpriced JPEGs with Carly Riley. So Kevin, Justin Mezel and Brian Carson were on that show last week. They were also on Zenika's podcast, Two Bored Apes, a couple of days ago. And some alpha for you. We know Kevin actually recorded a show with Tim Ferriss, another random show the other day, and I believe there was reference to Moonbirds. That hasn't come out, and I think Kevin went on Gary Vee's podcast as well, but that's yet to be released, so that might happen post-launch. But yeah, I think I'm so hopeful. I've never actually been more hopeful that a few friends of mine that are really getting into the space that are genuinely curious. I'm sure you get them all the time too, Steve. There's people who just sort of says, what do I buy? What's the next 10x? What's the next 10x? And those questions can be quite annoying. But for the people that are genuinely curious and, you know that they've done the homework, like I've never been more excited to hopefully for them to get a Moonbird, but it's still going to be a bit of a roll of the dice. One interesting part about the nesting that you mentioned, Steve, is I saw Ryan, I don't know if he tweeted it or whether he just put it in the Discord the other day, but the nesting element won't be available straight off the bat.
Oh, okay.
I think it will come in, I think he said around about the 24th of April. So, mate,
Okay.
or I think it was the 24th. So let's call it a week after launch, right?
Yeah,
So that might have an interesting dynamic for
it
the
will.
first 7 days as well, with that nesting component not being available. But look, I hope that we're both wrong and that it's not at a 6 to 8 ETH range a month out. But I probably agree with you that I've actually, to be honest, been telling people I believe, and again, this is not financial advice, and we're just speculating on things here. And this is a utility NFT, so this is not necessarily just to make a quick flip. There's going to be a lot of other benefits you can get out of it, but I see 6 to 8 straight out of the gates as well. Unlike you, and I obviously am in the proof echo chamber to a degree, but I've never felt like, I think some people have talked about Clone X drop as being, a big build up. But personally, I haven't felt this much enthusiasm and momentum for a project. And I do know of some larger DAOs, including Flamingo, that there's a lot of rumors circulating that they're going to deploy 1,000 ETH to Moonbirds.
Oh
So,
wow.
it's going to be fascinating. I'm getting up at 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. What an Easter, hey? I'll be getting up at 1 a.m. Sunday morning. And this is the other problem for us Aussies in the time zone is it's pretty horrible mint time. I am fortunate as a Proof Pass holder that I'll be minting 2 for free available from 1 a.m. for 72 hours for Proof Collective members. I have entered the raffle if I can get another one, but that's going to be a roll of the dice. If that does come off, it'll be between 2 and 5 a.m. When you'll need to mint. If you are announced as a winner, which will happen very early Saturday morning for us in Australian time zone, I think it's 9 a.m. LA time, Pacific time, on Friday is the announcement of the winners, and then 24 hours later is the public mint. But there's only a 3-hour public mint window for those allow listed raffle winners.
Jeez.
So if you sleep in on Easter Sunday or you have a really big night on Easter Saturday, you may cost yourself dearly. So
Well, this is
be sure you plan accordingly.
yeah, this is my problem. When this whole thing started taking off, March, April, May, I was up 2, 3, 4 a.m. minting. I had to make, after probably 4 months and 15 kilos added to me, I had to make a hard and fast rule that sleep took priority. So the reason I didn't mint proof was because I was sleeping. And I've also sort of got a not as hard rule, but I hate buying secondary. If I don't mint something, I find it very difficult to buy off the secondary. And you mentioned Clone X. That was another one, and it echoed that story of prices going down and people just saying, hey, we can get this for, it'll go down to 1 ETH or whatever. And Clone X stuffed up that drop, but people forget about that already. We're very forgiving. But in saying that, my hard and fast rule, tomorrow morning, I have to wake up at 2 a.m. Bored Ape and Super Plastic have some drop for a toy that I'm going to spend $250 on for some little toy. And then, of course, if I get in the Moonbird mint, I'll be waking up again there. There are certain things that I do break that rule for, but yeah.
Yeah. I think, and again, you should dig into those podcasts for anyone, listening, watching right now on Moonbirds to understand the utility. But there's a metaverse that they're going to be building out called High Rise. So they haven't mentioned a lot around, but my take on that will be Moonbirds will be your access ticket to High Rise.
I think
one of the things.
Yeah, we could have a whole episode on metaverses. I'm still not sold, and I just don't think a winner has begun yet. So let's jot that one down for a future.
I'm gonna make a very brash prediction right now. I just mentioned High Rise for the first time, and you said I don't think there's going to be. There hasn't been a winner yet. There hasn't been a real purpose, and I think we will talk about metaverses more. I'd love to play this episode back in 6 months and see what High Rise might be doing.
Yeah, might be doing or a price. Because look, there's a lot of speculation on land, but there isn't much utility at the moment.
No, but I'm talking about High Rise to me potentially is going to be, and I know I'm using the word potentially, so it's all speculation again. But
Not financial advice.
not financial advice. This is actually, I'm talking really not finances at all here. I'm talking about when you go into Decentraland or the Sandbox right now, it's event based really, right? Like Ridley runs something for Australian Open, like there's old school footage in there. You go in there, you check it out, you run around. It's built out spectacularly, but there's not a lot to do, right? In Decentraland, you're running around unless it's a festival and you've got a DJ playing, or you've got, Steve Aoki's doing something in there, whatever it might be. I think Kevin and the Proof team are going to build High Rise in a much smaller fashion, and it's actually going to be a place that people will want to hang out. Now, I don't have any more details than that, but I'm just making a brash prediction for the next 6 months.
Okay, interesting. Good. It's good that we can make these predictions and we get to come back and look at them. Okay, so there was just one final question. Yes. We only tripled our what we hope to talk for. So the question from Jamie was, Steve, any more NFTs meetups on the horizon at sporting events in Australia? Missed out on going to the AO meetup. So we actually had a chat at Melbourne, and we were talking to a few others as well. Marker from, he runs, what does he run? The Melbourne
NFT Melbourne, him and Theo, which was an event they put on in February. So that was an event here in Melbourne that was, they had about 900 people. So it was a great event, a lot of energy. It was at a nightclub, so it was hard to hear at times, but the energy was incredible. So yeah.
Yeah, so we were all chatting and we were like, well, we can always make the NFTs Australian Open event a yearly event. And then it came up, why not have the party at the Australian Open? We know Ridley, so we'll see what happens there. And then for sure, in the future, I plan to buy corporate boxes and whatever at a lot of Australian stadiums, and we'll be having mini events, and then we'll try to get a big group of people together. I was amazed that for a first event, we got 40 people to come during COVID, during lockdowns, all this sort of stuff. So I can see that sporting/NFT meetup thing being huge. So the hope is the 2023 Australian Open, we get at least 100 people, and it just keeps growing and it becomes part of the NFT calendar going forward.
Yeah. So it was a fantastic night, that one.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really good.
All right, so I guess that's us talking enough. If you have any questions or advice or anything, what do you want us to talk about next time? Let us know on Twitter. But yeah, thank you, Greg, very much. I look forward to our next chat. We'll try to keep it maybe to an hour next time.
Yeah, well, let's see how we go. I think we can get tighter on things, but we just had to get one away today and see how it went, and hopefully people enjoyed it, and we'll do it again next week. Are we going to do Thursdays, or we can work that out? But
Thursdays work for me.
Thursdays. Yeah. Okay, let's do Thursday.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys.